In 1998, I was literally drunk and stumbled into a bar at Walnut Hill and Marsh Lane in Dallas, Texas. Inside that bar was full of musicians, just a huge jam session going on. I was like, wow, check this out. And at the center of the whole thing was this guy, and that guy was David Pipkin. He just had a knack at making everybody in that room feel like that was a place, and accidentally stumbled onto a bunch of musicians in a whole brand new circuit. Little did I know that I was going to be involved with that circuit for 7 years. There's just no way to describe all the adventures I went on in those years. We pretty much traveled all over the place, and everywhere we went, there were just musicians crawling out of the woodwork. This was a real personal growth for me, both as a person and as a musician, and I learned so much through those years. I just really felt like that's where it all truly began for me, and Dallas took off like a bat out of hell. So I'm sitting there with my beer in this bar I'd never been in before, and watching all the on. It wasn't long before this guy came over to me. He said, "Hey, you look like a musician. You want to get up and play?" And I said, "Well, absolutely." And they said, "What do you play?" "Drums." He goes, "Great, we need a drummer right now." I got up and I started jamming with these guys, and the place just lit up, man. I mean, like, the place was on fire, man. And I think we did Wipeout or something like that. I did a drum solo, and from that point on, it was on. So at the end of the night, he said, "Hey, what are you doing tomorrow night?" I said, "I don't know." He said, "We're jamming." He said, "Hey, I'll tell you what, I'll pay you $100 to come out here and play." I said, "Well, yeah, sure." He said, "What about the next night?" I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Well, I'll pay you another $100 to come out." "What about the night after that?" "The night after that." And, well, lo and behold, here's the way it began. And that became a 7-year thing. We played steady at the Step Up Club. We were there Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and sometimes Sunday. And then we also were booking all over town. We were booking another place up in Lake Dallas known as Jolly Roger, and we were just playing everywhere. And wherever we went, there was just a whole cast of crazies and musicians that followed us around. From jam band, much like my friends YSY back in Houston, we ran our whole show like a big open mic, and the more the merrier. And David had a way of making everybody in that room feel like they were special, and that was the place to be. I truly learned a lot about show business and applied it from what I saw playing those years with David Pipkin. I learned so much from all the players and all the musicians, and that's really when I truly myself lost that chip off my shoulder that I've been carrying in the world of rock and roll. David introduced me to a bunch of musicians all over the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. Everywhere we went, there were just killer guitar players just coming out of the woodwork to play with us. And every time I turned around, there was a guy that could play a lead just like it was just water off a duck, man. They were just incredible guitar players that hung out around this place.
You've been there with me was when I played that Enfield, Texas Motor Speedway. People were coming up and handing me $100 bills tips because my guitar case from my Gibson was laid. My guitar case was laid open on the table in the front, and that's where people were putting tips.
Oh, Butch Star was out there.
And people are throwing ones and fives, and every now and then somebody come up there with 100, and they'd look at, they'd lay it down, they'd start to blow or something, they'd grab it back, and one guy come over there because I was wearing a cowboy hat. And he says, "Man, don't ever let them tell you a country band can't rock."
The true beauty of the situation was that while a lot of the bars we played in were country places, we played some classic rock places, and the beauty behind the band itself is whatever club we played in, we'd adapt. I remember the places we'd walk into, and they said, "Well, we're a heavy metal club." "Well, we got you." There were several places we were a country club. "Well, okay, yeah, we can play a country and western." There were other places that said, "Well, okay, we're a disco club," so we just transform into a disco band. But the musicianship level of the musicians in this particular band and the people that were around the band and the other musicians that followed the band, these guys could play anything. So anything you wanted, you want us to play polka, hey, that's fine. Whatever you wanted, we were able to give it to you, and that was a real beauty of Shades of Kool band. We were just able to provide every place specifically with whatever type of music they were looking for. Primarily, most of the time, we played good old Southern rock, and we found that most places that if they were country or they were rock club, they would accept us. We'd play a lot of Leonard Skinner and Neil Young, and just a lot of good Southern rock songs that were always accepted anywhere we go in Texas.
My dad pulls out $500. He says, "Don't even go get yourself some equipment here and hand me 500.
No, that's when he was a
and then my
kid.
grandpa pulled out $500 and handed it to my younger brother. Said, yeah, you need some new drums here. Go get you some new drums.
He was a kid back then, right?
I mean, if that was playing that same stuff that we played at Club Indigo. Okay?
I know, right?
Same stuff that we played at Club Indigo. My dad and my granddad heard us and threw out $1,000 right there at one night to me and my brother so we could get some more. I don't know what it is. These kids like this shit that y'all are doing. Here, go get yourself some music.
See, and that
Club
was
Indigo
when Frankie
that
was
guy
still
grabbed me and
playing.
pulled up his shirt sleeve. That song you did, Wizard. That song rock. Look. He pulled up his sleeve. Big old Wizard on the song. Yeah. That song rocks, dude. That's
Man, it was awesome.
Well, I mean, those were good times, man. Those times that you don't forget about. You know what I mean?
Man.
And that's true. There were a lot of really, really good times in that band. A guy named Frankie French joined the band, and he became the bassist extraordinaire. I once again, I found my John Candido and a guy named Frankie French, and we locked in as a drummer and bass player team. And when a drummer and a bass player lock together, a band is unstoppable. Quickly we took over the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and before we knew it, we were traveling all over Texas. Playing on this circuit, you never knew what to expect. There was always things changing and always new musicians coming and going. I remember one night I dressed up as Peter Criss on Halloween and played in the club and had a really great time. And my girlfriend at the time, on the way home, she said, it's Halloween, let's do something scary. About that time we got hit in a head-on collision by a drunk driver that was on the wrong side of the road. And as we were pulling ourselves out of the dashboard in the glass, I looked at her and said, scary enough for you, honey? Sadly enough, that same girlfriend unfortunately committed about a year later. And I remember having to play that night, and I went into the club, and the audience had built a castle out of shot glasses that evening, because back in the day we used to drink shots of Hot Damn, and that night the Hot Damn in that place flowed like and the audience built me a big old sandcastle out of shot glasses right in front of the stage. Another thing about this gig was trying to guess what the musicians were going to do, and it was a good perk because I learned to adapt, and I learned to work off cues, and I didn't know what was going to happen all the time, but I prepared myself at any time to pay attention, and that's part of being a drummer.
Now give me two times, now give me two times. We walking that down, just walking that down. I think I'm walking over here.
Traveling with the band was great, and eventually I got a new girlfriend. She had a really fast car, and we'd arrive in town oftentimes before the rest of the band, and we'd be coming to go. Eventually, one thing led to her, and being around all these great guitar players, something evolved, and that was that eventually one night I got up and decided to leave off, and I ended up playing guitar. I'd always played guitar, but I credit a lot of these years because the guys all around in the hotel rooms and stuff, they said, you know, hey man, let's show this guy how to play. And I learned basically how to play guitar a lot better. I never really considered myself that much of a guitar player, but during those years I certainly I learned a lot from those guys, and I couldn't thank them more because it's just a beautiful thing that I'm able to play those, you know, more than one instrument. And there was actually a time, a very brief time, that some of the jammers, I had Russ Alaska from a band called Seven Strings. I jammed with those guys a couple times sitting in, and we actually put together the Matt Hopkins band. That was the Matt Hopkins band at that time, and that was, you know, we had that on the side along with the David Pipkin band in the aftermath, and it was great. And you know, the Matt Hopkins band, I don't know if there'll ever be another one, but it sure was fun while we did it. So I was literally on top of the world. I had a killer band. I was playing guitar. I was playing drums. We were traveling from town to town all over the state of Texas, by different clubs. And most of the time I traveled with Frankie French. And Frankie was my bass player, my friend, and he loved to fish. And oftentimes I traveled with him. And I also had a girlfriend that had a really fast car. And then one morning we got the call, and this is where things changed. Eventually it came down to 3 couples traveling on the road together, and there was a little tension. And then I'll never forget that day I got this phone call, and they said that Frankie had been taken by the paramedics, and Frankie French always complained of headaches, and he used a lot of cocaine, he said, in the headaches. And eventually one morning I got a phone call, and I heard that paramedics had come and got him, basically he had overdosed. And the guy I have the tremendous respect for, because Frankie inside life that none of us have, and that is that Frankie actually passed away in the ambulance and was dead clinically for 3 to 4 minutes. And then Frankie came back to us. But whatever Frankie saw on the other side must have been amazing, because he didn't really all come back to it. So in that regard, Frankie French has been somewhere that none of us have. He's actually seen the other side, the life after death thing, and come back. He's never discussed that with us. I'd love to find out what that was. As for the club, the Step Up, in December of 2017, I found myself drunk again and in the same neighborhood, and I stepped into the club. And it was like going into the Twilight Zone. There was the band stage and the drum set, and everything is the same. It didn't take very long until somebody recognized me. And they said, "You want to get up and play drums?" I said, "Sure." And that was Mike McCullough. And those guys, some of them have been playing in that club for years, and ironically, they were still there. And I got up and played that night, and that was a very bittersweet night. That was just a taste of sweetness, man, to be back in the same place almost 20 years later, playing. And it all had begun by just stumbling into a bar one night.
Without all you guys, this ain't nothing, man. It ain't nothing but a gig without all the people that come out and make it a jam. And that's what makes it special, man. You guys are all the stars, and we appreciate y'all coming out and having fun.